Hey, yo, what's going on, guys? We got a brand new episode of Best Cards of the Week. This is going to be episode number 3, where we go over the best cards in Snap, as well as the decks that they're performing the best in. We're looking at the top 50% of Infinite within the past 7 days. Let's go ahead and jump right into it. And of course, the first card we're going to talk about here, to no one's surprise, is going to be Surge, which is the most popular card in Snap, and possibly even the best card in the game. I don't know. With all the 2 costs that we have going on at the moment, it is definitely a 2 cost heavy meta, but this is the one that is in the most decks with a 40.7% popularity, over 50.8% win rate, and a plus 0.05% cube rate. The top decks you are seeing Surge in are either the Sarah control stylist with Hitmonkey Invisible Woman, as well as more of a overpowering kind of list where you have Mr. Sinister, you have Galacta, Gwenpool as well. You have Gwenpool in 3 out of 4 of these lists, as well as the Agamotto Werewolf by Night list, where you're able to have a Nihilist, Agamotto, a bunch of different shells and packages, Merlin, to be able to get value there, as well as another Mr. Sinister list, but this time with Fastos instead of Juggernaut, and using Brood instead of Mobius. And you also are using Okoye, which is really interesting. One of these is a tech-heavy kind of hand buff list, and the other one is more of just a go greedy into the hand/board buff style lists. Next, we're going to be grouping a bunch of 4-drops, whether it is Zabu, which Zabu, by the way, does have a 51% win rate with a 21.2% popularity, average 0.06 cubes. Of course, in this Zabu style package as well, you do have Shang-Chi with a 36.4% popularity, the second most popular card in the game, a 51.5% win rate, an average cubes of 0.11, followed by Enchantress with a 20.1% popularity, 51.5% win rate, average cube rate plus 0.09. And then, of course, next you're going to have Galacta. Galacta has a 16.6 popularity, 51.5% win rate, average cubes 0.08 cubes, and then Gwenpool, a 19.3% popularity, a 51.5% win rate, and an average cubes of 0.10. So I kind of grouped all of these together because they're in a large range of shells together, whether it is that Sarah control style list with the Invisible Woman, or if it is just the buff stuff, which we're going to call that that Chamo has been running with Mr. Sinister. There's also a Werewolf by Nights Surfer list, which is very interesting. Or it's a Surfer-less kind of list, but it has Galacta, and it has Kahori, it has Gwenpool, all different ways to buff your Shaw, and there are a lot of different honor reveals for a Werewolf. It's kind of more of a Clea style list. I believe KM was playing something like this. And then we also do have the other kind of more greedy instead of techie style of the Mr. Sinister list itself. The next card we're going to be talking about is going to be the Hood. We're able to separate this opposed to that Zabu package because all those cards kind of float in and out of a lot of lists together. We do have the Hood with a 22.4% popularity, 51.3% win rate, and an average cubes of 0.05. This card is very interesting because you're seeing it a lot in the Victoria hand style list that is still incredibly good right now, even though there is more Killmonger out in the wild right now. If you're able to float your priority the right way to be able to kind of solidify not every single one of your cards getting destroyed, you can do better into that matchup. You're seeing this as well in the Hammer Bros list. You're seeing it in this Destroy list, which I still don't think this is the most optimized Destroy Dormammu list for this card itself to be able to use as just like another token to destroy or give some like death value there, which is interesting. You're also seeing it as another honor reveal for the Werewolf by Night. It kind of like is a catalyst in this shell as well to be able to get once in futured to kind of just like steal lanes a little bit later on, or be able to use for your Annihilus to be able to send to your opponent's side of the board. But you're seeing a lot more Annihilus as this meta is kind of at a good point right now. There's a lot of different decks that are successful, which we'll be talking about Annihilus and Sentry here a little bit later on in the video. But that is going to be the gist of the Hood decks. The Victoria hand deck is the one that is in the highest played. It also has the highest win rate of any of the decks, highest cube rate. Next would be the Hornifer Werewolf by Night Agamotto list. Next, we move to Kate Bishop. Kate Bishop has a 51.9% win rate, a 16.5% popularity, and average cubes of 0.07. It has a higher win rate than a lot of the other cards we've talked about earlier. Not as popular as them as well. It's something you need to keep in mind. The more popular card, more often than not, is going to have a lower win rate because it's in a larger pool of decks decks and a larger people maybe have access to said card, so it may tank the win rate or increase the win rate just depending on how people play the card. The decks you're seeing a lot with Kate Bishop is also that Victoria hand deck. People are using it in the Wiccan. I'm telling you guys, this Wiccan shell is still really solid, and it's very popular again this week. We also have it in the Agamotto Werewolf list, and a weird control Professor X stylist Kate Bishop. The spells do work with Professor X now, so people are trying to utilize that to be able to get werewolf value, as well as potentially even just move cards in there. You have Jeff value. Very interesting deck you have going on there, but Kate Bishop, another just great utility 2-cost. As I was talking about 2-cost cards kind of running rampant in the meta, it's another one of those cards that's doing incredibly well. Next, we're going to talk about my personal favorite card in the game, which is going to be Nico Minoru with a 21% flat popularity, 50.5% win rate, and average cubes of 0.04. This is a great utility 1-drop. Potentially Herbie might be like that too, coming out on Tuesday, which we did do a buy or bust on Herbie if you guys want to check that out as well. But you are seeing this in either the Nico kind of destroy, you're using this with, Dormammu, with the Death Wolverine Hood package, also in the Phoenix Force, which is Jet's Phoenix Force list, which is incredibly solid, but it does use Kid Omega, so kind of pulling out there. And then also a different style Phoenix Force list as well. You're seeing it more in these destroy and these Phoenix Force style shells, even though this is a utility piece you can use in, I think, a larger variety of decks than just that. But if you look at the win rates in the 2 list, the second list and in the third list over here, they are kind of more combo heavy, which is also tanking Nico's win rate, I think, itself. While as you're looking at the Victoria hand or you're looking at the other Phoenix Force Nimrod list, they do have higher win rates to kind of balance it out a little bit, as she's right at that 50% win rate. I think this card is still incredibly good, and I think people are still using it the right way. It's just some of the cards that the people are playing in these lists are a little bit more combo heavy, which is why the win rate isn't so high, and the cube rate isn't as low as it could be for what the win rate is, because people are min-maxing their cubes properly. Next, we're going to talk about Red Guardian, which is a card that is going to get increased play rates next week as the new First Steps Fantastic Four season does occur. Whether it is hitting Mr. Fantastic, whether it's hitting Herbie, any of these end-of-turn cards, this is one of those main counters you're going to have for those cards in order to offset what they're doing, because there's no other way normally to turn off those abilities. This card itself also has a 10.7% popularity, which isn't as popular as it has been in multiple months, which is very interesting. It did get hit in the OTA, going from a 3-3 to a 3-2. It does have a 51.7% win rate with a average cubes of 0.1, which is better than some of these other cards we've been talking about as well. You're seeing it in the Wiccan shell. You're still seeing it in Arishem, which this Arishem shell, by the way, they're not doing 34-card Monty anymore, which totally makes sense because Thanos' changes. But you're seeing in Cerebro 2, which I think when I saw this change, I already knew Cerebro 2 was performing well, but they have another new tech piece to be able to play in that deck, and it just really helps it even more. Also, in this Clea Sasquatch style list, where you have different ways to buff your hand, as well as just get Sasquatch on the board, you have it as one of your focal tech pieces other than Shang-Chi. And then, of course, you do have it in the Wiccan list. Red Guardian still is a really good just tempo 3-drop that you can play. Even though it has 1 less power now, I think it still is really solid to be able to mess around with and play off tempo, because unless it just kind of is like combo specific, depending on what you're up against, maybe you're saving it and just not to get Wiccan Curve. But if you're still trying to get Wiccan Curve, it's not the worst card you could play in this situation, which I think why it's still very used in that kind of style deck. But I think what goes really well with that card as well is going to be Gladiator. Gladiator is another good 3-drop, as we have fallen off of the Nightmare Sauron meta just a little bit, so you're actually able to play this card more successfully. Same with something like a Copycat, with a 51.7% win rate, a 10.5% popularity, and average cubes of 0.13, higher actually than some of these other cards, like as we talk about it legitimately now. You're seeing it in the... Wow, you're seeing it in Mill. You're seeing Mill actually be pretty popular in this top 50% of Infinite. Popular in the sense of there's actually 300 games of people playing Mill with a 0.37 cube rate, which is really good because you're supposed to snap into a lot of these Mill conditions, and that's how you're able to generate the cubes. If not, you're just going to be having people retreat for 1, so you have to snap before you actually start milling to be able to get the value itself. But you're seeing it also in the Werewolf Shawl kind of deck with Galacta, Gwen Pokahori. So you have a bunch of different ways just to buff cards. You also have it in the Chama Mr. Sinister list. You're seeing it in Wiccan. Another good card just to play on tempo here, and it's a good card just to play in general right now because a lot of cards just don't have that 8 power as Hela has died down and as Sauron has died down, and even like the big dumb idiots, Thanos has died down. Next, we will move on over to everyone's favorite dog, Cosmo. Cosmo has a 51.9% win rate, a 9.4% popularity, and average cubes of 0.11. This is another one of those kind of tech cards that is kind of meta dependent. And at the moment, there is still a surplus of on reveals. We'll see how this stands next week after the first week of the Fantastic Four first step season. But if you look at the list that this card is being used in, you're seeing it in that big dumb idiots Thanos list. While it is not the most popular and its cube rate is a little bit lower since the Thanos changes, I think now more than ever is one of those harder times to play Thanos. And the good players that play Thanos are going to have a high cube rate with Thanos, and the people that are kind of just playing Thanos to play Thanos, like you're going to see the skill difference between people that pilot Thanos right now, and I think that's kind of showing with that style deck. It does have a 53% win rate, but its cube rate is in the negatives 0.08. Whereas you have Move, not Bounce anymore, just Madam Web Move with Hellion, Fanfey, and Hulkling with a 57% win rate and average cubes of 0.29. And then you also have Red Wing. You have the Red Wing deck doing fairly well as well with a 54% win rate. And then you have an Armor Cosmo Bounce, which is someone just had a hate deck against all the Dormammu decks, so they ran that last week in order to get value. You're seeing Cosmo in those style lists. I like using Cosmo a lot in small ball. I think in small ball it's a really good combo piece to kind of offset what your opponent's trying to do, and people maybe are not really expecting it right now. I think this card is going to be very interesting as their either defensive tool into all of this potential more Red Guardian, or as an offensive tool to stop some of these on reveals. Either way, this card is performing incredibly well right now. The next card we're going to talk about is Victoria Hand with a 51.3% win rate and a 4.5% popularity, with an average cube rate of 0.07. You're seeing this card a lot in that main deck with 1,200 games, which is way higher than a lot of these other lists you're seeing. People running the Infinity Ultron list, which I wish Infinity Ultron got some better value than it does right now, have kind of the lower win rate, lower cube rate, whereas if you're running more into just what you have going on with the Iron Patriot, Misery, Nico, Kate Bishop, you have tech with Juggernaut, Shadow King, you also have Frigga to get double value, you have Moonstone to get double value, and then you also have another more of a tech style list with Killmonger as well, which you're playing off of the Killmonger, which is interesting. The cube rate is very high, the win rate isn't as high. I think it's a little bit more, I don't know if it's necessarily, it's less greedy, but I think it's a bit more techy, and I think that's kind of what's offsetting what you're doing with this list, because I think it is you're fighting to not have priority in order to get the most value with this card itself, as this does have 1,200 games, a 54% win rate, an average cubes of 0.24. That is doing incredibly well at, half infinite, top 50%, as well as higher infinite, still being very popular, as Killmonger still is popular, but Destroy isn't as popular as the higher you go. I think you're getting a lot of value with this deck as well. The next card we're going to be talking about is going to be Sentry. Sentry has a 8% popularity with a 52.5% win rate. Average cubes of 0.10. This card in the Annihilus package is doing actually incredibly well. You're seeing it in the main Werewolf deck with Agamotto, with Hornifer's list that has the most games. But if you're going back to just a regular Annihilus Sentry package with your Werewolf using Zabu, where you have some tech pieces with Shang-Chi and Enchantress, and you also have Merlin and both style shells, it's also doing incredibly well with a better cube rate, a better win rate at that 55.4%, average cube rate of a 2.21. But then as you look a little bit further down the line, you have a list that's actually using Cersei right now. Cersei is actually getting value because the snap conditions for Cersei are still more RNG dependent, kind of like using Polymorph or Merlin, except with Cersei hitting an entire lane opposed to just a singular card itself. But I think Merlin kind of has just elevated this style of shell since the first week, and I think that's why it's still doing incredibly well. You're also seeing Sentry in this Marvel Boy Clea style list, where you're really using this for like Werewolf value, as well as you have Merlin, you do have your Surge, you have all these tech pieces, you have buffing stuff with Gwenpool. Like, there's different ways to play around it, and I think that's also really helping this style card, whether it is the Annihilus Sentry package. All of these are running Werewolf, and I think Werewolf is just back in that space where it's not bounce Werewolf anymore, because you're able to use Merlin as like a bounce piece, whether it is removing cards or polymorphing cards. It just does incredibly well. So it is cool to see Sentry back to its normal self. All right, moving on to more of our last few cards here. We do have Corvus Glaive. When I'm talking about Corvus Glaive, I'm talking about kind of this discard in general, which, by the way, Corvus has a 54.6% win rate. Popularity of only 3% right now. Average cubes of 0.14. This card is doing incredibly well in the classic Khonshu Apocalypse Now style discard, having that extra energy, even if you've discarded some of your focal pieces, bringing it back with Khonshu. You also are running Dracula. You have Proxima Midnight getting value. You're not running Bullseye, so you're not running into having to just do Swarm Collector, dock-in stuff. And I think that kind of allows you to have power more spread out across the board and a little bit less predictable power. I think that kind of helps a lot, as well as having other combo pieces to get into other lanes with Proxima, being able to kind of win the game later on with Dracula. Like, there's a lot of just variety that I think you can mess around with here that I like more in the classic discard at the moment opposed to the Bullseye style. You're also seeing it in Hela. There's two versions of Hela. There's the Lockjaw Hela. One is using both actually are using Supergiant, sorry. Both are using Supergiant. One has a higher cube rate than the other 4 decks here with the Lockjaw version, which is very interesting, especially helping you reach your combo pieces if you haven't been able to get them prior, since Lockjaw's activate ability does swap it from a card remaining in your deck. So if you don't hit with the Jubilee, you also have Lockjaw to help as an alternate there, which is really cool itself. And then you just have another discard style shell here. Let's talk about Scream. Scream right now has a 1.8% popularity, but a 56.5% win rate with an average cubes of 0.24. This is still my sleeper card at the moment that not a lot of people are playing right now, but is doing incredibly well. As you look at these lists, if you sum them all together, this is going to be less than 600 games in total. First two is, 280. Add that to 150. You're looking at 430 plus 62, less than 500 games actually itself, with some crazy high win rates. Like, you have just Cannonball in this as a tech piece, Legion as a tech piece. You're not running Mercury. You have the Stomper to get value. You have Hellion to be able to move your cards elsewhere. Or you have kind of more of the similar kind of classic, in a sense, style where you're using Arrow to be able to move stuff around. You're still using the Stomper, so it's like Stomper with Scream. Spider-Man has like a 54% win rate right now, too. You also have this list with Astral Projection, which is actually very interesting. Getting use out of Astral Projection here, so you're also not taking up a board space. But if you look at your on reveals, you have Polaris, Stegron, Cannonball, Arrow, and Spider-Man, which are cards that can move around and kind of potentially clog your board, but using Astral Projection to get into some of these lanes or be able to get better value than you maybe would have not, playing these cards because it's cheaper with Astral Projection is really interesting. So that's the only real usage I've seen out of that card. But Scream is performing incredibly well. 150 games, averaging almost 1 cube. Out of 150 games, 70% win rate post-infinite. That is insane numbers, by the way. But let's talk about Clea. Clea is going to be the last card that we're going to be talking about today. All right, so Clea is the brand new card that released this week with a 12.5% popularity, because a lot of people have been testing her this week, a 48.8% win rate, and an average cubes of 0.07. It, of course, has the ability where it adds the Faultine to your hand, but I feel like this card has kind of fallen flat a little bit to most people, but I don't necessarily think this card has fallen flat. I just think, like, the decks you're playing it in, you have to really prioritize Clea in, and I think they're not performing well as some of the other just decks in the top meta right now, and I think that's kind of offsetting what's going on. I'm not saying, like, falling flat like this card is bad. Like, I'm saying, of course, this card's not performing as well as some of these other cards that we've been talking about today, but these lists are still good, just not having Clea as your main win con, but having as a different out to kind of buff some of your other cards, playing into the Werewolf by Night in 3 of these shells, I think is really cool. You also have Bishop. I've been seeing a lot more Bishop getting value from all these spells. It was already getting some of this value with Merlin anyways, and I like it in the Sasquatch, Mysterio style list with the hand buff options, just to be able to get value there. You're playing a lot of cards, getting Sasquatch value too, playing a lot of spells, playing your Mysterios. Like, it's really cool that it's kind of built a new kind of style of playing these lists. These hand buff lists are different now opposed to what we've seen in the past, which I think is really cool. But this card in general, I think, is okay. I don't think it's necessarily a good card or something you should spend your resources on right now unless you like the style of it. And if you like the style of it, by all means, spend every single ounce of resource you want to because it's what you want to do and it's the way you want to play the game. So just keep that in mind. If that's what you like, do it. You know, like it's Marvel Snap. You play the game yourself, do it for yourself. But I think this card's okay. I think the rest of these cards, Scream is crazy good right now. Surge being number 1 doesn't surprise me. We'll see how these new First Steps cards go, whether it's Mr. Fantastic, which I think probably will have about the same play rate as Surge, if not maybe a little bit lower. And then Herbie will probably be kind of towards the middle, I would say, of the pack. It just really depends if people are going to get Herbie and if people are really excited about the Season 2, you know, with also the Super Premium Pass and the Fantastic card coming out. But I do want to say thank you guys so much for watching episode number 3 of, it was Top Cards of the Week. I like Best Cards instead. So that's why we've substituted it to Best Cards in Snap. And I'll say thank you guys so much for watching the video. If you guys did enjoy it, definitely feel free to like. Definitely feel free to comment. Definitely feel free to subscribe if you are new. Turn on the notification bell if you want to. But yeah, let me know down below if you guys like where the meta is going. You think it's really going to take a big shift with the new First Step cards. But until the next time, it's been real. God bless. And yeah, Tucker out.